can get a year of Grip Up Plus free. That means zero.
If there are credible miracle reports that you've maybe or examined in your research, I should say, then I'd definitely love to hear them.
Okay. Well, these are taken. I'm going to give you a couple from the appendix of my book, The Legitimacy of Miracle.
Okay.
And there are some more. Some others in the dialogues, the more popular book, Dialogues on Miracle. So this is an account from a woman in our church. I did not see this miracle myself, but many, many people in my church witnessed it. And the following account is written on the basis of an interview I conducted with her.
Okay.
So her name is, I was interviewed October 4th, 27. And she's granted me permission to publish the account and talk about it. So I'll just read it to you.
Sure.
Irene MacDonald of Fredericton, New Brunswick, a young wife and mother, began in her early 20s to suffer severe back pain and spells of weakness. She had numerous exploratory surgeries by doctors seeking to find the cause of her condition and had a disc removed from her back on the basis of their advice. None of these procedures seemed to help much, but in her late 20s and early 30s, her ailment largely went into remission, and she was able to function comparatively normally. By her mid-30s, however, the earlier symptoms recurred with much greater severity. She was sent by her local doctors in Fredericton and St. John to a specialist in Montreal, where after a series of tests, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She remained in the hospital several months before being discharged and allowed to go home. After a short time at home, her condition further deteriorated and she was sent back to Montreal. Weakened to the point where it was often impossible for her to turn over in bed, she underwent further examination by numerous doctors. She was subsequently told by the specialist treating her that her MS would progress very quickly to the point where she would take pneumonia and die. Upon release from the hospital, she came home to Fredericton. At first, she was sometimes able to walk very little in the mornings, being confined to a wheelchair the rest of the day. Soon, however, her condition worsened to the point where she was bedridden. Eventually, she had to sleep on the floor, with her husband having to turn her every hour because of her muscle spasms and her inability to turn herself. She was at this time receiving spinal injections every 10 days in order to cope with the pain. Irene remembers that when she was first told by the doctor that she had only a short time to live, the fact that she was going to die soon did not really sink in. After several months at home with her condition steadily worsening, the closeness of her death became a reality. Although she believed in divine healing and been prayed for numerous times, she began to sense that death was near. Irene had been urged by her doctors to go into the hospital so that her final days could be easier, but she stayed at home with her husband, Norm, and friends and neighbors providing care. One early Friday afternoon, a friend phoned to tell Irene that she felt God had told her that Irene was going to be healed shortly. Irene thanked her, but told her friend that she was not sure that she would be healed. That afternoon, however, Irene recounts feeling that she met God in a special way. She had been very concerned about what would happen to her daughter in the event of her death, but in prayer felt reassured that God would look after her daughter. Irene further prayed that by morning God would either have left her in her weakened state, in which case she would enter the hospital, or that he would give her a little strength, in which case she would take her increased strength as a sign that she could trust her friend's message that God intended to heal her. At the time, she told nobody of this prayer. That night, Irene had a dream in which she experienced herself as walking. She felt instructed to pray and wait, and that God was going to heal her. When she awoke in the morning, she felt marginally stronger and took this as confirmation of her prayer the day before. She told Norm that she felt that she was going to be healed and that she should go to church the next day. She spent Saturday confined to her bed and praying. Norm phoned their minister and indicated that Irene, who had not been able to go to church for a number of months, hoped to attend the next day. The next day, Irene's daughter came down with a bad case of the flu. Irene, feeling she needed to go to church, phoned a neighbor who at the last moment canceled her plans to attend church in order to look after Irene's daughter. Irene and Norm got to the church partway through the service. Irene was too weak to walk and had to sit in a chair and be carried into the service. She remembers feeling embarrassed that people in the church would see her in such a weakened and frail state. As she was being carried up the aisle to be prayed for by the minister, she very vividly experienced an inner voice saying, "You will know my power in a minute of time." When the minister, who had no previous experience of having healed someone through prayer, laid hands on her and prayed, she immediately regained feeling in her arms and legs, along with complete control of her body and fully regained muscular strength. Many people were audibly praying, but only one voice stood out in her consciousness, and that was a woman saying, "Just as he made the birds to fly, you will walk out of here." Irene walked out of the church and took up all the activities she'd formerly been too weak to do. In the over 25 years since her healing, there's been no return of any of her symptoms. The experience of the inner voice Irene heard as she's being carried up the aisle is very special to her. She says that she'd never experienced God so closely before or after. She stated to me that if she had a choice of being healed 20 years earlier, but without what she experienced going up the aisle, she would choose to wait to be healed in order to experience God's voice as intimately as she did that day.
Wow. Wow. Praise God. That's awesome.
I don't know. I have more, but I don't. Do you want to have another one, or do you want to carry on with the interview?
Well, you've whet my appetite now, Dr. Larmer. So yeah, no, that's awesome. That's amazing. And did she get any kind of? I mean, obviously she's fine.
Yeah.
Now, did she get any sort of medical kind of confirmation afterwards? You said, or?
I believe she did. I was not able to track it down in paper. When I was interviewing her, it was like 25 years later.
Yeah.
But she told me that it had been written up. There are numerous people in the church that were aware of her illness and observed the healing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's powerful enough, whether a doctor said anything or not. I mean, one minute she's in this horrible condition, she hears
Hello, hello, hello. Because today we're gonna teach about James 32. Uh, we are taught that when we have faith in Jesus, we are uh, commanded to uh, show the result of our faith in action. If we are actual faith in Jesus Christ, we are actually faith in Jesus Christ, we will show it by obedience and honor. Okay, we show it by obedience and honor. So yeah, that's it. What it is. Your faith, you are obedience. Your faith, you will obedience.